What is the primary source of market power for a monopoly? That's where the barriers to entry are going to come into play. And remember that these barriers to entry are essentially any obstacle that prevents any one firm from entering into the industry that the monopoly is operating in. And these barriers to entry, remember, under the monopoly case, are nearly insuperable or impossible to sort of surpass. So the monopoly basically is set into place. They have these effective barriers to entry set into play, and that prevents any one firm from actually going into the monopoly's industry and selling the particular good or service that they are providing out into the marketplace. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at these barriers to entry and a few examples of each of them. So here, just in general, these barriers to entry. Barriers to entry. And this is going to be the major source of a monopoly, how they get their market power. So what exactly are these barriers to entry? These are any obstacle that makes it more difficult for a firm to enter into an industry. For a firm to enter into an industry. So once again, these barriers to entry under the monopoly case are nearly impossible to sort of surpass. And there are three barriers to entry that we want to go ahead and take a look at. Barrier to entry number one are going to be control over significant factor of production. Control over a significant factor of production. And this one is probably the most sort of usual or common barrier to entry that you think about. And this one makes a lot of intuitive sense. If you control a significant factor of production, whether it be land, labor, physical capital, or technology, if you control a raw material or a resource, that means every other single firm is going to have to go to you in order to get that particular resource. They cannot go anywhere else. And therefore, you are going to exercise your market power. You're going to try to prevent other firms from getting the resource for themselves. And therefore, you're going to charge as much as possible. So therefore, this is going to be a very effective barrier to entry and does cement you in a monopoly position. The example, the sort of specific example that they provide to you on the slides is going to be the NFL. The National Football League is actually seen as a monopoly firm. What exactly do they have control over? What significant factor of production does the NFL control? And that's going to be all the elite college players. So in the NCAA, the National Collegiate Athletic Administration, all the players within college, when they want to go pro, they go straight into the NFL. There is no other league that they can go into to get the same recognition and to showcase their skills. They don't go to the AFL, they don't go to the CFL, they don't go to the XFL. They go straight into the NFL in order to get the most that they can. Most money, most talent, etc., etc. So therefore, the NFL is going to be seen as a monopoly firm that controls a single factor of production, a very significant factor of production, which is going to be all the top elite college players. And just also as a side note, there was the XFL. If you don't know what the XFL is, it's the Extreme Football League, and it was developed by Vince McMahon, of all people, the CEO of WWE, the wrestling company. And the first venture into the XFL happened in the early 2000s. So I think in 2000 and 2001, where he basically had the idea of saying, hey, we think that football, the NFL, is really, really too slow. It's really boring and it has too many rules. So let's go ahead and create our own league. And of course, with the NFL being in a monopoly position, it's going to take a huge amount of money and huge capital investment just to go ahead and compete with it. And Vince McMahon, he exactly has that kind of money. He has a lot of fuck you money, and that's exactly what he wanted to go ahead and do. So he created the XFL, and how successful do you think the XFL was in their very first year? The XFL essentially folded after their very first year in operations, and it's estimated that both Vince McMahon and CBS, the network that carried the XFL shows or the games, both lost about $50 million each. The XFL didn't do really great after that 1 year because they ran into a lot of issues. However, just a year ago, the XFL wanted to go ahead and get back into business, Vince McMahon said, okay, let's go ahead and start the XFL once again. We know exactly what went wrong the first time and what exactly happened. That's where the coronavirus and COVID-19 basically destroyed all sports and basically destroyed the XFL once again. And it's probably not likely that the NFL is going to have another competitor. The XFL was actually doing pretty well during the past year, but the pandemic basically destroyed any thoughts of that. Vince McMahon and sweaty, muscular people. That's name a better combination or a better duo. He likes really sweaty men for some reason. So just a little bit of thought about this barrier to entry. Barrier to entry number 2 is going to be economies of scale. So economies of scale. Economies of scale. Economies of scale, will denote this as EOS, just for short. And remember what we said about economies of scale. It tells us that as a firm produces more, its costs are going to go down. And if a firm is able to establish these economies of scale early, they're going to essentially be able to undercut every other firm in this case. So let's go ahead and talk about these economies of scale. So by establishing EOS early, so economies of scale early, an existing firm has the ability to underprice new competition. And we see this a lot with utility companies. So this is the best example that we can think about. So utilities, primarily with FP&L. And we consider the economies of scale to denote a special kind of monopoly known as a natural monopoly, where it's better for the entire industry and the entire market to be serviced by one firm. But we'll get into that later on within this chapter. So with these utility companies, it requires a huge upfront cost in order for this firm to provide this service. So for FP&L, they provide electricity. So that means that they have to provide the huge infrastructure. They have to provide all the sort of equipment, they have to have the power plants, they have to have the workforce just to go ahead and provide electricity for residents here, say in Florida and Miami-Dade. If one smaller firm wanted to go ahead and provide electricity to a smaller subset of people within Miami-Dade, they themselves would have to undergo this huge investment as well. They'd have to make their own power plants, they'd have to have their own workforce, they'd have to have their own sort of equipment. And what is FP&L going to do when they see a smaller firm trying to infringe on their property or infringe on their territory? They say, hey, we see you trying to go ahead and service all these other customers, and we know that you're going to have this huge upfront cost in order to provide this particular service, so what are we going to do? FP&L says, I'm going to go ahead and cut all of my prices. And when I cut all of my prices, I'm going to cut my prices so low, it's going to be below your cost. And the smaller firm says, we can't really compete with that. If we try to build up all the power points, if we try to provide all the electricity to these subset of customers, their FP&L is providing this service at a price that is lower than our cost, and that's essentially going to run us out of business. So that's essentially a monopoly position being set forth with these economies of scale. As the firm provides more and more of this good or more and more of the service, its costs are going to go down. And that's exactly what we see right here, especially with the utilities company. So they're going to underprice new competition and prevent them from going into the industry that the monopoly firm is operating in. And then finally here, we're going to go ahead and take a look at the final type of barrier to entry, which is going to be some type of government protection. So government protection through government franchises, patents, and copyrights. So we know about 2 of them, but we can also include the government franchises, which is probably going to be the new one that we hit on right here. So government protection through government franchises, patents, and copyrights. So here, let's talk about the government franchises first. And it's not like a franchise in the fast food case, it's just a franchise that the government is going to allow to take place. So it grants a firm permission to provide a specific good or service while preventing other firms from doing so. So grants a firm permission to provide a specific good or service, specific goods or services, while preventing other firms from doing so. While preventing other firms from doing so. And essentially, the government comes into play right here where they say, hey, to this one firm or one company, it says, hey, we're going to go ahead and grant you the sole sort of property of this particular good or particular service, and no other firm can do this good, can sell this good, or provide this particular service. And what is a government organization that operates under a government franchise, can you think about? That's something that you're going to do every single day. You're going to check your mail, and that's where the United States Postal Service comes into play. United States Postal Service. Postal Service. So the USPS. They are going to be operating under a government franchise. So that little tin box that you have in front of your house, that is only going to be serviced by the United States Postal Service because the government grants them permission to deliver mail to that tin box in front of your house. No other company can actually go ahead and touch your mailbox. UPS, FedEx, DHL, they cannot deliver mail to your mailbox. It is essentially government property. If you commit a crime against a mailbox or through mail, it is actually considered some type of felony. They actually take mail crime very, very seriously, so do not commit any crimes against the mail or the United States Postal Service. So here, essentially, what we have right here, the USPS is the only firm that can actually go ahead and deliver mail to your mailbox. No other firm can do so, and that's a government providing a government franchise to this particular organization. Other types of government protection are things that you already sort of know about, and that's where you hit the patents and copyrights. So patents. And patents are going to provide some type of legal protection to individuals and firms who invent new products and processes. So here, it provides legal protection to individuals who invent new products and services or processes. So we'll put processes here, and processes. So it provides legal protection to individuals who invent new products and processes. So it basically says if you invent something new, if you come up with a new process, you can file a patent, and if you have the patent, you are the only one that can be benefiting or profiting off of this new product or process. No one can steal your idea and take advantage of that and take the profits for themselves. It is your idea, it is your product, it is your process. And we see a lot of things that are on the show Shark Tank falling under the lines of patents. Very closely related to a patent is going to be the copyright. So copyright. And copyrights are going to go ahead and protect ideas created by individual. So patents are a little bit more tangible, while copyrights are going to be a little bit more theoretical. So here, protect ideas created by individuals. And these ideas can be in the form of a variety of things. So it can be in the form of books, music, art, software, etc., etc. So here, once again, these copyrights are closely related to patents, except copyrights are now going to protect the ideas created by individuals in the form of books, music, art, software, etc. So basically, if you create a unique idea about wizards, zombies, hobbits, whatever it may be, no one can basically take your idea and steal it and take the profits once again off of that. So we see the government protection coming into play. It gives us a very, very good incentive to continue to want to innovate, create new ideas, new products and processes, because essentially you're going to have a monopoly over the things that you come up with. So as we can see right here, the barriers to entry, there are 3 of them that we go ahead and take a look at. We see number 1, control over a key input of production. Number 2, we see these economies of scale. And number 3, we see these government protections with patents, copyrights, and government franchises. And if you are a monopoly firm, this is exactly how you're going to source your market power, trying to prevent new firms from coming in, stealing your ideas, stealing your products. You're just going to go ahead and use this to your advantage. And that is exactly how you're going to be having the most amount of market power and setting prices as high as possible. In our next section, we're going to go ahead and do the economic analysis of a monopoly and see exactly how they're going to be maximizing their profits. Is it going to be the same, or is it going to be different compared to our other market structures? We'll go ahead and see that in the next video. I'll see you guys there.